Fasting. It's not the most popular area of spiritual discipline. In fact, although it's one almost all Christians are aware of, it's probably the least encouraged and talked about, especially in the West, where we tend to shy away from practices that cause us physical discomfort. Not only that, but fasting has been associated with more extreme ascetic practices, such as self-flagellation, deliberate exposure to the elements, and sleep deprivation. Such things seek to bring our bodies into submission, to put to death the flesh, as they say. Such asceticism tends, quite rightly, to be frowned upon, but unfortunately, its association with fasting can damage our view of this area of spiritual discipline. In Matthew 6, Jesus begins one of his statements saying, "When you fast," not if, you notice, but when. Jesus expects his followers to fast. Not only that, but he set us an example when he fasted in the wilderness. So good Christian fasting clearly has a place and a purpose. But what exactly is fasting? And what is it for? Fasting, as exemplified by Jesus and others in the Bible, involves abstaining from food and sometimes water for a certain length of time. It's as simple as that. You may have come across people talking about fasting from other things such as television, chocolate, or even Facebook. But actually this doesn't have anything to do with fasting. Abstaining from such non-essential things is part of the discipline of simplicity, which is covered elsewhere in this series. Fasting only ever involves abstaining from things that are vital for life, the most common being food. So what is its purpose? Fasting is certainly not about trying to lose weight, at least not when it comes to spiritual discipline. Nor is it a reminder to prayer, though prayer and fasting do sometimes go hand in hand. Nor is it a way to twist God's arm into doing what we ask of him, like some sort of hunger strike, so that we get our own way. The purpose of fasting is to humble ourselves. For example, when Ezra and the Jews were travelling to Jerusalem, they stopped at Ahava, and Ezra wrote, "There, by the Ahava Canal, I proclaimed a fast so that we might humble ourselves before our God." And in Psalm 35, David wrote, "I put on sackcloth and humbled myself with fasting." The Bible is clear that God hates pride. Unfortunately, this word has lost some of its meaning over time. For example, it's fine to be proud of your children when they do well at school, or to be proud of a job that you've done well. The pride that is so condemned in Scripture, however, is when we think more highly of ourselves than we should, when we become so confident in our own abilities that we believe we can go it alone without God. A proud person becomes their own God. And though it is so obviously ludicrous to think of ourselves in such a way, to some degree this attitude is in us all, hungry to be fed and to grow. Fasting helps to bring us back to the reality that we all need God, that we could not survive a moment without him. When we choose not to eat food, our bodies are very quick to start complaining. Our hunger reminds us that unless God caused the seeds to grow, the sun to shine and the rain to fall, unless he caused animals to produce offspring and provided them with all they need for life, there would be no food. But God has given us food to eat, water to drink, air to breathe, and so much more. He's provided us with everything we have. Fasting brings us back to the humbling reality that we rely on God for everything, that he is God and we are not. Before engaging in fasting, however, there are some practicalities to consider. If there are any health reasons that mean fasting could be an issue for you, for example, if you're pregnant or suffer from diabetes, it is always worth seeking medical advice first. The same applies for anyone wanting to engage in an absolute fast, abstaining from both food and water. And this should never be undertaken for more than 3 days. Aside from medical advice, if you're at risk of thinking of yourself more highly than you ought when fasting, it is worth heeding Jesus' advice and not telling anyone else. After all, it would somewhat defeat the purpose of fasting. Instead, allow the discomfort of hunger and the complaints of your body to remind you that there is only one God, and we are not Him.